Hello, my name is Leo and I'm running an animation studio in Vietnam. Today I'm going to share with you about speed graph, a key feature in After Effects to create the spacing and timing for your animation. To understand the speed graph, first we'll need to create a simple motion. On our toolbar, you can see a lot of icons here. Next to the pen icon is a rectangle icon. I now click on it and hold, and it will display a tool to draw a circle called ellipse tool. Click on it. Now, one important habit that you need to bear in mind when drawing is to draw your shape in the center of the frame so that the anchor point stays in the center of the shape. To do this, I will click on this button called Choose Grid and Guide option. When you do this, you see the title action save option. Turn this on and you immediately see the save area. This save area is important because when you display your video on different devices, there is a high chance that it will be trimmed. Therefore, to keep your images, your motions, and main actions fully seen, you should keep it inside this white frame furthest away, which is called action save. Inside it are smaller frames. If you use some kind of typography, then you should keep your text inside these frames. For example, in your video, you introduce character A, but this character protrudes out here in this black area, and your video is shown on a small device, or the screen ratio is incorrect, your character will be out of frame. Afterwards, I will select the ellipse tool and move the mouse cursor to the center of your working frame, right here. You hold and drag. Just drag first, and then you press Command Shift or Control Shift to draw the circle from the center out. This will help your anchor point to stay in the center of the circle after you draw the shape. This is one of the habits that I usually perform because, as you know, the anchor point is the root of all the motions such as scale or rotation. If it stays elsewhere, then the motion will be altered. After completing this circle, I will press V immediately to return to the selection tool. You should make this a habit because the anchor point tool only helps us move the anchor point around. I will move the mouse cursor to the corner of this circle and scale it down by dragging it to the left like this. I no longer need the title action save as it looks quite encumbered. So, I will click on this icon that looks like a target and toggle off title action save. Now I try to make our shape move from left to right. Do you notice that when I move this circle to the side, its anchor point is situated far away? Well, this is my bad, so I will press the Y button again and reselect the anchor point. Drag it to the middle of our circle. Now I press P to display the position property and move the time slider to the 0-second mark. Click on the stopwatch. Drag the slider to the 1-second mark. Drag the circle to the right while holding Shift to make it move in a straight line like this. Now you can see our circle move, and it is moving flatly. This goes against the physics principles because, as you know, in reality, when an object moves, there will be a lot of forces affecting it, such as gravity, resistance, etc. Therefore, the way this circle moving evenly can only happen in an ideal environment, and thus it looks unnatural. And that's why we need to adjust the graph. There should be slowness and quickness in the motion. If it is hard for you to understand, then there is another way more simple to explain. For example, when you drive, before you reach the velocity of 40 km per hour, you have to accelerate from 0. And when you are about to reach your destination, you have to slow down. Otherwise, if you keep your velocity and brake sharply, accidents will happen. It's the same with animation. To make everything happen naturally, there must be temporal differences in motion, just as in reality. Now, I will select the shape layer 1, and I will right-click on it and rename it to make it easy to remember. I will rename it as Circle A, for example. With this selected layer, press Command D or Ctrl D to duplicate it. And you also right-click on this layer and rename it to Circle B. With our shape layer selected, when we click on the Circle B layer, on the toolbar you can see its color, the fill color and the stroke color. Currently, the stroke color is set to none, as the icon is displayed as a crossed empty box. As of our fill, I will click on the color block and choose a blue color to make it discernible. When you select circle B and press U, you will see its two keyframes. Now, the circle B is on top of circle A and it's hard to see, so we will need to move it up. There are many ways to do this, the most simple of which is to slide to each keyframe, drag this blue point like this. Isn't it tedious? But what if you have a lot of keyframes? So I'll press Command Z to undo or Ctrl Z for those who use PC. When you select both of the keyframes, you will immediately see these square dots. Now I only select one keyframe, and you will see that this keyframe isn't filled. Or I choose the other one, then the remaining square dot is also not filled. Select both of the keyframes, and you will see the two square dots are filled. You only need to move your mouse to either of the two, hold Shift, and then you can move your circle up. Well, you can already move your circle without holding Shift, but doing so will move it in a straight line, so that it is parallel to the orange circle. Likewise, I will select both keyframes of circle A and drag it to the bottom. Of course, we have to make these two motions different, so this is what I do. I will select the two keyframes, right-click, go to Keyframe Assistant, select Easy Ease. Now drag the time slider to the start, press space, and you will see the two circles both move for the duration of 1 second. In animation, we call it timing. So, with each frame, you see the distance for circle A is always the same. Do you see these dots? They are always evenly spaced. However, with circle B, these dots are not evenly spaced like that. They are short and long distances, and in animation, this is called spacing. This circle will move very slowly at first, and then it gradually accelerates, and finally slow down at the end. You can see the difference, right? Now I'll select circle B, press Command D to duplicate it again, press U to display the keyframes. I will select both keyframes and move it up like this. With the newly duplicated circle, I right-click and rename it to circle C. Now, what we have to do is to select the keyframe and rearrange these shapes so that they are evenly spaced and easier to see. With the circle C, we will also change its color, change it to white, for example. With circle C, we will select both keyframes and go to the graph editor to edit the graph. When you adjust the distance, you also adjust the velocity at the same time. What you need to do is to look at the bottom of the time slider. Next to the eye icon is a square box. Click on it and select Edit Speed Graph, and you'll see a curve like this right away. At the bottom of our curve are some square boxes. Click on it and you'll see the yellow lines appear. You can now adjust these yellow lines and alter our speed graph. Doing this is simple. You select these dots here and drag it. Let's see the result. You see a sharp difference between our three shapes. Their motions are greatly varied. What this means is that in a duration of 1 second, these circles have different spacing graphs, and thereby the motions have different characteristics. In animation, this is highly emphasized. I will now solo circle C to only display it. Go to the graph editor. If you don't see anything, it means that you haven't selected any properties. For example, we select the position property and we'll see a corresponding graph. About the graph, please bear in mind that the flatter the curve, the slower the motion, while the steeper the curve, the faster the motion. Now let's drag both ends to the max and you'll see it moves very slowly at the beginning and then extremely fast in the middle. You see how it changed drastically, right? Now, if I select the first point, drag it to the start at the maximum height like this, It means the motion will be very fast at the beginning and gradually slow down. Check it out. See? It's very fast and gradually slow down. Likewise, select the second point, drag its end like this so that the graph forms a new shape. You see that our shapes will move very fast, then slow, and then fast. See? Fast, slow, and then fast. It's because at this section, the graph is very flat at the bottom, like it stops moving. This is one of the things that we can experiment with the graph editor. See? Okay, I hope that now you can understand a bit more about the graph editor. Some more things for you to take note. On this graph, we are not limited to only 2 points, but we can also add more points in the middle. And when you do that, it means that you are adding more keyframes to your motion. Because if you want to create different motions, you need to have different set of keyframes. On our toolbar, there is this pen tool. Click and hold on it. Select the Add Vertex tool, this tool with the plus sign. You can click anywhere on this graph. For example, here I will create 2 new points. Immediately, we will see these square boxes and the yellow lines controlled by those points. You can move them. And you have very different set of motions. See? There will be parts where it moves differently. So, it will be up to you to create the motion. Just bear in mind, the flatter the curve, the slower the motion. And the steeper the curve, the faster it is. And when I add 2 new points, there will be 2 corresponding keyframes. And in the graph editor, if I select and move these boxes, then the position of the keyframes when we talk of the graph editor will also change. It's quite interesting thing with After Effects, huh? Now I will select these 3 circles and press delete to remove them. Let's try drawing a square. I turn on the title action save again, select the rectangle tool and move the mouse cursor to the center of the screen. I click and drag while holding Command Shift or Control Shift to draw a square right in the center of the shape layer. After you finish drawing, press V. Previously, we have used the graph editor on the position property. Now, let's use it for the scale property. I choose the shape layer 1. As you might know, each shape layer may contain a lot of transform properties. Firstly, there is the transform of each shape in the layer. Secondly, there is the transform of the whole layer, since the anchor point of this whole layer rests in the center of the square. I only transform the whole layer, which is faster. So, I only have to select the shape layer 1, press S to display the scale property, and I will move the cursor to this 0-second mark, click on the stopwatch of the scale, and a keyframe will be created. I will hold this keyframe and drag it to the 1-second mark, and in the first keyframe, I will set the scale to 0%. When you press play, we'll see that the square appears flatly. I don't want that, so I will select these 2 keyframes, right-click on either of them, choose Keyframe Assistant and select Easy Ease. All the hotkey is F9. Afterward, you can see that the velocity of our square changed. Go to the graph editor, select the scale property, and you'll see a red curve like this. Select this red line and drag. You can also drag both of its ends. You see the square start moving slowly, and then fast, and then slow again. Such a smooth motion, right? The graph is such an interesting feature in After Effects, and it can be applied to any properties. Now, with our shape layer, I will press Command D to duplicate the shape layer 1. And I rename it to Square A. With the second shape layer, I will also rename it to Square B. With this Square B, I will click on this round button to display solo. And here in the Layers property display, you can see the chain link right. I will now toggle it off. We don't need it anymore. Now I will try setting our original shape with the x-axis scale of 100%. With the height scaled at 0 and the width scaled at 100, you can see the shape is scaled up like this. Now, we will go into the graph editor of the scale. Right away you can see two distinct lines. One is green and the other is red. Note that the x-axis scale at the beginning is 100, and at the second keyframe it is also set to 100. It means that there are no differences in the property, and that's why you see the straight red line here. As with the green line, it is 0 in the beginning and then 100 afterwards, so that's the reason why you see a curved line. When you click on the green curve, you see some yellow lines at the bottom. If you happen to move the yellow line of the red line, don't worry, just drag it to the side and select the other point. The remaining yellow point will belong to the green curve. Be careful when you drag the lines, try not to alter the movement path of the red line. Well, actually it doesn't matter, maybe we have this motion smoother? Now let's see. Isn't it cool? Similarly, you can apply to the rotation property. I'll select the square B, hold Shift and press R to display the rotation property at the same time. I'll click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe, and within one duration, I'll rotate it 90 degrees like this. Let's see how the square appears. Now, when our square appears, I will select both keyframes, press F9 to apply to easy ease. Remember this hotkey. In our graph, the rotation property has a curve. Bear in mind that the graph must always be speed graph. Here you can see many options. There are value graph, speed graph, etc. We are getting the hang of speed graph first. It's the easiest. As for value graph, I will introduce it to you later because it is quite confusing for those who are not familiar with After Effects. You can see that the second motion will be much smoother than this first one. Quite exciting, right? When you're working with properties such as scale or rotation and you want to move the shape, you don't need to select both of the keyframes as with position. This is because with position, each of its keyframes will register a different location, but the scale and rotation have nothing to do with position, therefore we can freely move it like this. Let's press play. So now we can create interesting motions. I'll delete these two boxes and we try another thing. Let's draw a line. Select the pen tool. On our working space, I will turn off the title action save. Click on the screen, hold Shift and click on the second point. You have a straight line like this. And on our toolbar, it currently has a white fill. But since this is just a line, we couldn't see anything. I'll click on this stroke box and set it to a white line. Next to the white block, you can see this parameter 7 pixels. That is the width of the stroke. You can increment it perhaps up to 59. I select this shape layer and choose this arrow to display its parameters. Click on Content, click on Shape 1 and click on Path 1. Now I'll click on the stopwatch of the path and drag this keyframe to the 1 second mark. Now as you may know, when you choose the path 1, not the path, then these empty boxes will appear for you to adjust. I'll click on the second box, hold Shift while dragging it to the position of the first box. When you press play, you'll see the line appear very flatly, right? It's really dull. Therefore, I'll select this shape layer 1, press Command D or Ctrl D to duplicate it. As we have nothing to do with the position property, you can easily move the line around without selecting many keyframes. I choose Shape Layer 2 again. Press U to display its keyframes. Select all of these two keyframes. Right-click to choose Keyframe Assistant and select Easy Ease. Or you can press the hotkey F9. In your graph editor, you can adjust these two lines. And when you press play, you notice that the motion of the line whose graph has been edited is always much smoother. What you have been doing is adjusting the ease. In animation, to make things move realistically, you have to add the ease. This is a must do.